Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carmen Mezzera. For those I haven't seen yet, it's so great to see some names in the participants list that have been able to join us throughout this week. As we have talked about throughout this week, we are here to be of service to you. And so what I want to do is introduce a little bit about APSIA, the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. I want to share a little bit about our Public and International Service Advisor Network, of which you all are now very wonderful and very welcome parts. And then I want to talk about some of the ways that we can make your life a little easier as an advisor, and hopefully we can help you bring the work of public and international service to your students and to help you answer their questions and welcome them into this space. Before we get too far into this, I absolutely want to thank my amazing team who makes these events possible, in particular, Brittany Chor, who's had lead on all of the great sessions you've been able to attend this week. And my colleague, Briana Suarez, will share some of the amazing work that she does to make it easier for your students to find the right program for them and to really feel welcome and ready to come into this space. So to jump in and get started, I invite all of you, if you feel comfortable, to put your name and your organization in the chat. And if there's one dying question you don't want us to leave here without tackling, please let us know that as well. I'll share some of our tools and resources and, like I said, a background on APSIA with you. And then we just want to get in and be of as much help as we can. So APSIA itself has been around since the late 1980s, and we are the community of graduate schools worldwide that have that depth of focus in international affairs. To be an APSIA member, schools have to pass our evaluation process and show us not only the quality of the academic program that they have, but also the depth of the international affairs work that they do and the professional focus that they have. We take that P in APSIA very seriously. And so through that process, schools may become members or affiliates, and I'm happy to talk more about that distinction. But through that, once a school has become part of the APSIA family, we do a lot of work with them internally to make them better, stronger, faster graduate schools of international affairs. And then what's most perhaps helpful to you is we do a lot of work to help make it easy for students to come into this space and to find different tools and resources along those lines. So what I would like to do a little bit is to share our website with you as a great first step to finding a lot of those tools and resources. So hopefully everybody can see our website page, which is just simply APSIA, APSIA.org. And when students come to you and they're wondering, what is this space? Why should I study it? Who teaches this? What are the career possibilities? The APSIA homepage can be a great first step. So we start with that initial question, why? Why international affairs and public service and policy? Students can take quizzes, they can read about other students, they can find some of their basic questions to get answered, and it can be a great way for them to get introduced to all of these different possibilities. All of our schools through the graduate schools and programs link have profiles on our site. Students can read more about what they teach, click through to find their employment outcomes. We heard that so clearly at the session on Wednesday, linking their career goals to what happens when students go to different programs. There's even a program matcher, again, a little quiz they can take to figure out which one might be the right fit based on their interests and based on their goals and ambitions. When that student comes to you and says, I just want to leave the world better than I found it, but I don't know how to do that. We actually have a whole career guide on our site that unpacks lots of different issues and areas, offers some tips for getting started in that space, and even suggests employers around the world so they can start to read more, read job descriptions, see, oh, I think I'm interested in human rights, but I have absolutely no idea what that means. And they can learn a little bit more and start to build out their knowledge. We also tell, again, lots of stories about what our alumni get up to worldwide, so they can draw inspiration from that and maybe see what paths other people have pursued and start to figure out what problems they want to solve in the world, as we heard about so clearly at the Tuesday session, as they start to think about their careers and ambitions. And then we have an active jobs board where students can find in-person and remote internships, entry-level positions, all the way up to those of you who serve PhD candidates. We have postdocs and faculty roles. So lots of different opportunities there for your students to get started as they try to think about how they begin in this field and what kinds of possibilities exist there. The other piece that I very briefly want to touch on is our fellowships and scholarships directory. If students are trying to think about how they pay for study abroad, how they pay to go do research, how they pay for graduate school, they can sift through all kinds of different possibilities. Again, read a little bit about it and then click through to that opportunity. They can sift whether they're based in the United States or US citizens based anywhere or based in other regions, and what kinds of things they're trying to fund. So lots of different ways for them to expand their knowledge about what's possible and to build out their understanding of what sorts of opportunities are there for them. The other piece that we have that I wanted to share with you all, if my computer will behave, which it won't, so we'll go right around it, is the network and the resources that we have specifically for you as public and international service advisors going forward. The PISA network was born in 2018, really as a way to try to be of service to undergraduate advisors who may know a lot about pre-veterinary medicine or ways to get into law school, but may not know how to serve that student when they come to them because they feel called to public service or because they feel interested in leaving the world better than they found it, or they're curious about having travel in different cultures and using their language skills in trying to solve complicated problems that face us, like disease or climate change, poverty, inequity, all of those sorts of issues that fall under the public and international service umbrella. So through the PISA network, we hope to make your life a little easier and your lift a little lighter. Many of you hopefully saw our Friday email that comes out remarkably every Friday with lots of internships and jobs and scholarships and different opportunities. Every month we host events for you as part of your free professional development to build up your understanding of what's going on in this space. Hopefully, again, you saw those links, but if not, on March 21st, we're gonna unpack that complicated web that is government pay scales. So when your students say, is there any money to be made in public service? You will have a broad understanding of how the GS system works and the different opportunities and benefits that it may provide. On April 26th, we'll be looking at careers in research, particularly at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And then throughout the whole year, thanks to Brittany's hard work, we have speakers who are going to come brief you on different fellowships and scholarships, programs you may know well, programs you may have never heard of or always been curious about. And if there's something in particular you're hoping we'll touch on, please let us know. We're always looking for great ideas of ways to build out your knowledge and understanding. So through PISA, you'll have this regular source of content, and we have seen folks just pull those paragraphs out, stick them in their newsletter, pull them out, stick them on Twitter, put them on Facebook. We again hope to make life quite easy for you in that regard. We'll have these professional development opportunities. And then as an evergreen source of information, we have pisanetwork.com as your website. One great tool that we are continuously adding to is the resource directory. So if you say, oh, I went to that Tuesday session, really interesting, is there a handout I might be able to find on careers and international affairs? Here on the resource directory, you can go to the download section and find an overview of the resources we have, different reasons to work for the federal government, ways we talked a lot about quality letters of recommendation at the session yesterday. We have our overview of careers and international affairs that you can download, print out, and give out to your students. We have a tool to let you compare different professional degree programs as we did at the session on Wednesday. All of these are free and absolutely available to you to use for your students, to have ready at the ready for your resources, and just easy ways to bring this kind of content to your classroom. We do have a discussion board. I will admit it's rather quiet, so we invite you to post your questions. And also through that same listserv where you got your Friday email, you are welcome to say, man, a student came into my office and they were trying to figure out how to make an international affairs career out of their dance major. And people have these kinds of conversations and say, oh, did you point them at this public diplomacy resource or this for-profit company that does international dance, and all of these different kinds of informations and sharings. So lots of different community building opportunities as well. The last piece I wanted to highlight for all of you is ways to bring us to your classrooms, to your students, again, totally for free. Under the About Us section, you can request materials from APSIA schools and APSIA partners. So if you're looking to build out the actual physical paper content, I know that's sort of a classic idea these days, but we can make sure and facilitate ways to bring all of that to you and have our schools and partners send that to you so you have it at the ready. We also regularly, in lots of different time zones, come and do presentations, again, for free, for your students, for your colleagues. We're happy to come talk about best practices in applying to graduate school. We're happy to talk about the many different career possibilities in international affairs, particular content for advisors on helping students prepare for a global marketplace. So all of these requests can be made through the PISA website, and we are ready and willing, spring, summer, and fall, to come into your classrooms and do this kind of content for you. I now want to turn the floor over to my colleague, Briana, who will be able to talk to you a little bit more about the work that we do for your students and helping make their lives a little easier as well. Briana.
Thank you, Carmen. Although you touched on a couple of things that I was going to say, so it saves me a couple of breaths, but that's okay. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I know I have not been in some of these sessions, but now you get to see me. My name is Briana Suarez, and I'm the International Admissions and Operations Manager here at APSIA. And I work very closely with all of our admissions offices across all of our APSIA schools. And there are many ways that we are here to help your students specifically. So whenever you get a student that comes into your office and is looking to learn more about international affairs, international relations, public policy, all of that, but has no idea where to start, we are happy to kind of step in. And we do that in multiple ways. One is, for example, we have our online graduate school fairs, where students that are interested in graduate school and want to learn more about programs can connect specifically with our graduate schools there. Our first online graduate school fair will take place on July 20th, and our second will be on September 28th. And this is free to all of your students, and I will make sure to get any materials to market this out to you all so you can get your students to register. And again, this is a perfect way for them to make connections with our admissions counselors, our admissions staff at all of our APSIA schools that will be participating. Usually we have an average of about 27, 28 APSIA member schools at each of these events. So it's a great way for them to make these connections prior to them even applying to graduate school. We have now also started our in-person events. They're a little smaller than the fairs that we usually hold, but this is a great place for students to connect with alumni from APSIA schools, with our admission staffs across APSIA schools, and connect with any other prospective students wherever they are. The places where we will be announced shortly once we finalize this, but we will most likely be in New York City and in Washington, D.C., and a couple of other locations in the U.S. and abroad. So if that is of interest to your students and they are located in these places, we would love to meet with them in person. As Carmen mentioned, we do provide webinars for all of your students that we can also tailor to whatever you want us to speak on. So outside of the best practices in applying to graduate school, which I will touch upon a little bit. We also have webinars on careers in international affairs, preparing for a global marketplace, a mix of these. Again, just go to the PISA network and you're able to request, and one of us will be either able to beam in virtually, or if we are located near you, we are happy to come in person and chat with your students in person. We also hold monthly webinars, which focus on the best practices in applying to graduate school. This is a webinar series that started in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, where students can tune in to learn about everything grad school, starting from how do they choose the right program for them, when is the right time to apply to graduate school, what does a typical graduate school application look like, how to apply and find financial aid for graduate school, careers beyond graduation in international affairs, and staying competitive in the field of international affairs. These monthly webinars are free to anyone that is interested in listening, not just prospective students. I've welcomed advisors at these webinars as well. So if that is of interest, you're more than welcome to join. I believe our next one will be on March 16th. Happy to send more information along regarding that webinar. We also have open office hours that we've started. So this is a great way for those that maybe are not interested in a specific webinar, but have a dying and burning question that they want to ask about international affairs, graduate school, careers, and so forth. One of us will be online during open office hours where they can connect with us. They can just jump right in, Zoom in, and we can have a conversation with your students. So I encourage you all to share that, especially if a student has a question that you may not all be able to answer. Lastly, as Carmen mentioned, we are also more than willing to help in your programming. So if you have a panel that you're setting up and you want someone to speak on a specific topic within international affairs, we are happy to help coordinate that. Whether you want one of us to sit on a panel and participate and talk about a specific topic, we are more than happy to lend our time to you all. Again, whatever can help in make the lift for you all a little easier, we are more of ready to be of service to you all. One more thing that I want to direct to you all that I think would be of interest. We hold, we don't hold, we have an internship, a semester-long internship that is available to all students across that are interested in it. It is a paid internship. It is the International Communications and Marketing internship. Again, it's a semester internship where a student usually can be remote or in person, depending on, mostly now we have it remotely. So students can be part of the APSIA team, help us in our lift, work from things from social media marketing, to writing briefs on specific topics such as trends in higher ed, helping us coordinate our in-person and online events, helping us determine where we'll be next, right, in person. So again, this is a paid internship, which I love to mention, just because I know there's a plethora of internships out there that are unpaid, but we make sure to provide a stipend to our interns to help support the APSIA programming and team. So if that is of interest to you all, I'm happy to provide more information of when the application for the summer internship opens. We welcome your students to apply. We would love to see more applications and more students be part of the APSIA team. And lastly, again, just follow us on social media. There's so many opportunities that we tend to post across our social media channels. On Twitter, we're constantly posting. I know Carmen does a great job of posting internships, job opportunities, call for papers, not just for undergraduates, but for advisors, for those in graduate school, for PhD candidates and all that. We have our Facebook page, we have our LinkedIn page, we have our Instagram page. Please follow us on social media. We are happy to connect with you in all other ways. And I think that pretty much covers most of the things that I cover, but if there's something that I've missed, please feel free to put it in the chat box. I'm happy to answer it. Carmen, if I missed anything, please, I know you do a great job jumping and supporting. So if there's anything I missed, let me know.
No, I just threw all of our handles in the chat, including a link to a great playlist that we have of video shorts that touch on some of the content Briana mentioned. So if you know that your students may not be up for that good, long, in-depth look at all the different parts of, say, the grad school application process, Briana's created some great 2 to 3 minute looks at what questions can you ask to figure out what program makes sense, or how do you pay for school, and some really nice little vignettes. And the content is also coming out in different languages. So if you have students who are non-native English speakers or just want to practice their Korean, there's content there for them too. Briana, there is one question, whether students can intern as early as their first year in undergrad.
Yes, they can. They just need to apply and follow the application instructions. But yes, there's no limit to how, we do limit it to undergrads at the beginning, right? So freshman year and on, but yes, they are able to.
We also have a question about whether there are resources for students doing a summer school abroad, like taking an online class at a foreign university. I have my answer, but Briana, do you know of any tools off the top of your head? So a few of our schools do offer those kinds of programs and welcome students from around the world. So you may see that in a school's particular profile. If there's a particular country your student wants to go to, I know we have a couple colleagues in Switzerland who do this. We have some colleagues in the US who do an intense summer at the UN and working with the UN, or some of them will have an intense summer on the way the foreign policy mechanics work here in Washington, DC. So you'll see some of those advertised on our events page and some of those through the school's profiles. But to my knowledge, and I love being wrong in this regard, there's no one comprehensive place to find all of those different possibilities. But there may also be some things on our fellowships directory that would be, money to find it or fund a short-term summer, something along those lines. But Alexandra, if you find one, please let me know. That's the kind of thing we love to add to the resource directory. So are there particular questions that you all get that you're wondering if we have our answers to, or you're curious about? I know what we often hear from students, but I'm curious what you all do. And you can also feel free to raise your hands too, if you'd like to jump in.
Or questions that came up throughout the week that maybe weren't answered during one of the webinars, we're happy to also cover it. Again, we're here to kind of hear from you all, get some feedback, and be able to be of a resource.
Briana, I know one question I often get is, should students go to graduate school straight out? Oh, and Nancy preempted me. Should students go straight out of college, or should they get some experience?
Look at that, same wavelength. Great question. So we often recommend that students take at least 1 year in between their undergraduate and their graduate studies. This is mainly for them to get some professional experience, because one, professional experience allows students to really figure out what they're interested in versus what they think that they're interested in. And it also allows them to build some of the skills that a lot of the admissions committees will be looking for in an application, or in an applicant, excuse me. That is not to say that students can't go straight from undergrad. About 25% of current APSIA students are straight from undergraduate, their undergraduate studies. But again, these are students that have already thought of their career paths, have thought extensively, and it's okay to not have that kind of level of thinking. Most of us don't or didn't at that time. So that's why we often recommend at least a year. I also recommend students to take a look at the program's requirements, because there are certain programs that will require X number of years of professional experience before they are even able to apply. So some schools may require at least 2 years. Some may require, depending on the program, a mid-career program, for example, may require 5 years of professional experience prior to applying. So I often recommend students take a look at the requirements of the programs that they're interested in. But just to summarize, we usually recommend at least a year between their undergraduate and graduate studies. Again, gives them a great time to figure out the things that they may believe that they're interested in, and then really sometimes to figure out what they actually are interested in studying in graduate school. I know that happened for me, definitely, in my own experience, so I can speak to that as well. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, and I will add to it. Anytime you need someone to come talk your students out of going straight through, I'm happy to come in and do that. That's what I did, and I am delighted to be a cautionary tale. Daniela asks, she's met with a lot of students who think they don't have enough experience to get a competitive internship. I know my advice, but Briana, is there anything you would recommend she share with her students?
Yes, so I know we touched upon this particular question in one of the webinars this week, but usually most students have certain experiences that make them competitive that aren't often thought of as typical, how can I explain it, that aren't often considered to be competitive skills. So for example, I know during COVID, many students had to become caretakers. That in itself is a skill that can talk to the, able to multitask aspect of a person's ability at work, the person's resiliency. I know resiliency is one of those words that is often thrown around in this field, but very much so, right? And these are certain skills that you don't necessarily pick up, at a 9 to 5 always. So we often tell students to really think about the story and the things that they've gone through, and what are those skills that they can parse out of their experiences. They don't have to, have done a 9 to 5, working on the Hill, internship, then going abroad to do another internship, because not many of your students are able to have those resources and experiences. So I often tell advisors to really help those students think through what their experiences have been and what skills they've taken out of it that lend themselves to being competitive in these internship applications and in the field broadly. Carmen, I'm sure you have more to add to that.
The only two things I would add to that great answer would be, one thing students have that old people like me don't is just energy, right? The willingness to do the work is something that we certainly look for, that organizations are hungry to find people willing to do the kinds of tasks that interns need to do. And if your students are really nervous about it, look for smaller organizations that are close by. There's a lot of international affairs and public service going on in all of your local communities that they can tap into and contribute to. There's also, as I mentioned, a much broader shift to remote internships. so they can access opportunities that maybe aren't immediately around them. And I'm happy to talk about some of the virtual apps and the local apps if that's of use. But students who have energy are welcome by lots of different groups, and it can be a great first step. The other thing that a lot of them have is a digital native fluency that organizations are hungry for. So if they are already speaking all of the different social media languages, that they already have a comfort level with technology, that is something they can contribute that they may not feel gives them a competitive advantage, but absolutely does. Because as my much younger colleagues can attest, there's often times when I say, does this sound like it should sound for this channel? Or does it sound like an old person wrote it? And they go, oh, sweet God, please never, ever post that online. This is something your students, again, can contribute just inherently based on how most of them have grown up and who they are as people who've had this as part of their life for a long period of time, rather than those of us who had to learn it as a second language in many ways. So lots of things that they can bring to the table that they may not think count, but absolutely are things organizations are hungry for. Rachel asked whether we work with organizations that aren't colleges or universities, and if so, what that looks like. Yes, Rachel. So in addition to our work with prospective students, in addition to our work with employers to hire the fabulous students and alum that come through our programs, we work with lots of different partners to tell the story about what it is to study international affairs and why international affairs is important. We work with partners to explain the many different professions in international affairs. We work with partners to inspire those who are even earlier in the pipeline. We know that a lot of folks don't sort of wake up at the age of 26 and go, oh, international affairs, perfect, this is the career for me. So we are happy to support your network of campus chapters and all of, we've have had some great conversations with UNA, both the national chapters. I'm a member of the UNA locally, and we always point, UNAs are a great way for those of you who I mentioned are looking for local opportunities. It's a nationwide, a worldwide network of folks who are interested in that relationship between the United Nations and their home country, and a great way for your students to get involved, get exposed to the language of international affairs. Many of them take interns. So there's lots of good work to be done, and we look forward to those kinds of partnerships. Anita asked, oh, sorry, Briana, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to that we've also hosted students from organizations whenever they are in town, specifically in Washington, D.C. at our offices. So if students, if your students are doing a summer trip to Washington, D.C. and want to meet with practitioners in the field of international affairs or want to chat with us specifically, we've often hosted students at our offices and have helped in the programming there. So that's how we often lend a hand to these organizations, not just, connecting one-on-one, but connecting with them and their students moving forward.
And that's true. I'm in Washington, Briana is in New York, and Brittany is in Houston. So we have a bit more spread now across the US in addition to the power of Zoom. Anita asked, but I mentioned in the chat, but I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to hear it. If you are interested in bringing us into your classroom, you can feel free to email me. My email is simply carmen@apsia.org, or I also put the link in the chat to request a presentation. Either one will start the conversation and we can zero in on a great date, great topic, and a great time. Yes, and we are looking forward to welcoming, for example, West Virginia University students who will be coming to the APSIA office. When that's not always possible, depending on the size of the group, but it's something we absolutely love. And when students can't come or you just have a one-off, Briana also mentioned our office hours. We have students who come by all the time, whether it's one burning question or just because they feel like they're the only one who's interested in this stuff. And we are here to be of service to them too. I see one question just for me, but again, happy to do our best to answer whatever you have. Someone said they've been an advisor for a long time and never knew about the PISA network. We are, as I said, turning 5 this year. I can't do math. I don't even know what year it is. And so we have been slowly building up and are so glad to have advisors across 46 different states and really trying to deepen the relationships that you have and continue to help bring you all together and to be of service to you. So tell your friends, tell your colleagues who are in other advisor networks. And we really want to be as much a part of making this something you can bring to your students and share with them and help them. One of the other questions that we often get, and Briana, I'll let you tackle this one, is what kind of person, what kinds of things might they be interested in, or what kinds of majors can be combined? to come into the fields of public and international affairs?
That is such a loaded question, but thank you, Carmen. Such a big question. Really, any majors and interests can be combined for a career in international affairs. And this is because international affairs really touches most of our, I mean, all of our lives, even from the time that we wake up to the time we go to sleep. I think COVID was one of the big kind of disruptors in that sense, or not disruptor, but was a way for us to see how interconnected we were, right? So an event that started in one part of the world affected worldwide. So there's many ways of combining interests and majors. It really comes down to the student bridging and connecting and figuring out what is the career that they ultimately want, whether that may be, just making a change in the world, right? As Carmen said, leaving this place a little better than they were before. Some students, have language interests. That's often one that I take a look at. Students may be interested in history, culture, economics, law. That's a big one that we often tackle as well. Business. There again, it's hard for me to answer in one succinct answer because there's so many interests and majors and combinations that I've seen that students can put together to have a career in international affairs. It really just comes down to them thinking through what it is that they want to do and what brings them joy and what brings them value as a career moving forward. Carmen, I know I did not do a great job at answering that question, but I'm happy if you want to tackle that one.
No, that was a great answer. And again, the only tiny bit I would add would be a great challenge that I like to put to students, and we talked about this earlier this week too, is challenging them to ask about all the different ways that the world might be broken or the problems that they might see in the world. And if they want to put their professional energy into making it a little less broken or a little less terrible, and pushing on that issue and asking them, okay, if that's the problem that you would like to put your energy into solving, then you can help them sharpen, well, what do I really mean by that? And who am I really talking about? And once they have a good sense of who the actors are and where the barriers are between where we are now and where success as they think of it might be, then they can start to unpack the ecosystem around that problem, and they will find opportunities in public service. They will find opportunities in the private sector. They will find opportunities in the nonprofit sector, or those big multilaterals that you only hear about in the alphabet soup of the UN and the IMF and all of those. So for our space, unlike others, there's a lot of cross-sectoral, interconnected work that goes on. So that's why we encourage students to really think about it around a problem rather than a particular job or a particular thing they want to do. Go ahead,
and
please.
this is a great place to plug the International Career Guide that I'm sure we've mentioned already, but this is a great place to direct students if they want to just have an overview of the sectors that they maybe want to work with. Once they have that answer of what the problem is that they want to tackle and are starting to parse out exactly what it is and how, the International Career Guide does a really great job of giving students and advisors insights of what that sector looks like, what sample employers look like in that sector, what are the skills that students may need to be successful in that sector. And then if and when grad school comes into play, what are the courses that they will need to take in order to gain those skills to be successful in that field. So I definitely encourage you all to direct your students to the International Career Guide. It was made with so much input and so much love and so much insight from our APSIA team and colleagues. So definitely encourage you all to share that resource.
And when they ask you questions you can't answer, you can feel free to hit any of the three of us up as well. We are very happy to be of service. I did want to throw our emails in the chat so that you have them if at any point you do have questions. Again, we are here to be of help. And I don't see any others in the chat, but I did want to put one last call out if folks do have burning things they want to talk about, resources you're curious if they exist. We have everything from advice on students getting security clearances to letters of recommendation to how to navigate a grad school fair. So lots of great things out there, but all of that came because someone asked for it. So please do let us know what you're curious about or if you have other questions.
I guess one last question that I often get, and I like to end webinars is just why are students needed in this field, and how can advisors, help get students, make this field more accessible to students? Carmen, and I will tackle you with that answer.
Sure. So young people are needed in this field for not only that energy that we talked about, not only that perspective that they bring, but because all jobs at some point are going to touch on these issues. Whether they are going to go into the private sector, 95% of consumers for US businesses live outside the United States. Whether they are going to be interested in the effects of global health on everyday lives, whether they drive a car or eat food, all of it has an international affairs component to it. And so having them have this perspective is a really useful professional development aspect for them, but it's going to be part of their work. Their colleagues are going to come from lots of different places, their bosses, all of this sort of lens of the interconnected, interdisciplinary global landscape is just part of life now. And so it's really useful for them to have a toolkit to understand and evaluate and analyze and contribute into the way the world is and the way the world is moving. We know from what employers tell us, we know from what employer associations tell us, Forbes magazine, international affairs is the 7th most useful degree according to the National Association of Colleges Employers. Forbes magazine rates it as number 25. So all of this shows that there is demand and utility in these kinds of fields and these kinds of opportunities. But I think it's also about the contribution young people can make to leaving this world that has been so broken and so disconnected better than they found it, because they are connectors, I think, by nature. They are problem solvers by nature. And I think they are people who really feel called to repair some of the damage that's been done over the last, let's go with 2023 years, give or take. And so that's why we hope to showcase for them, some of whom maybe have never thought about this as a place that may be deserving of their attention or really desirous of their skills, to show them that this is also a possibility in addition to fields that they may be very familiar with. It was a way longer answer than you wanted, but there it is.
I think that was a great answer.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, we are here. Please let us know what we can do. And please do explore a little bit those tools we've shared. All of this is free and open to you, thanks to the membership of APSIA. And so we hope you will find a way to bring it to others. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.